Huge fight taking place on Saturday between undisputed super middleweight champion Saul Canelo Alvarez as he takes on dangerous, unbeaten fellow Mexican challenger Jaime Munguia in what's set to be an all-action fight over in Las Vegas this weekend. This will be Canelo's first all-Mexican clash in almost 7 years. Perhaps not the one most people would have wanted with the Mexican monster himself, David Benavidez. Still looming out there, but an adequate replacement nonetheless. Jaime Munguia always brings it in fights. And Canelo Alvarez, comes into this one as the substantial minus 600 favorite. Munguia coming back at a plus 410. So at least on the surface, this appears to be quite a one-sided fight in the book's mind. But, Munguia, he does have paths to victory in this fight. When we look outside of the straight winner odds, Jaime Munguia is actually minus 220 to have the most punches thrown in this fight. And that's honestly, looks like a value play to me. We know what Munguia is all about in fights. He comes to make war, simple as that. He's a huge volume puncher, employs a heavy-handed two-fisted attack. And, he's absolutely relentless in there as well. The danger for Munguia in this one is that while he is a relentless two-handed assault machine in fights, that style does leave him incredibly exposed on the defensive end, especially to someone with Canelo's precision, and power when it comes to countering. Munguia is far from defensively blessed in the ring. We saw that in his fight against Sergey Derenko last year. Derenko, similar kind of dimensions actually to Canelo, was landing clean, flush shots of Munguia up top all night, especially from close range. And that's an area Munguia struggles in all honesty. He likes that mid-range space in which to get off those hooks in which to operate. And as that fight wore on, Derenko started crashing the pocket more and more, looking to make it uncomfortable on the inside for Munguia. And that's one big negative for me on Munguia, ahead of this fight. Canelo absolutely feasts on fighting on the inside. He's a master in the pocket. And as well as Munguia, Munguia ate those shots on the inside from Sergey Derenko last year, but Canelo's obviously on a completely different level when it comes to raw power. So for all the much vaunted talk about Canelo's decline across his last few fights, losing against Bivol, not being able to get a 40-year-old Triple G out of there, John Ryder going the distance and so on, and something Munguia was able to one-up him in, obviously. Canelo's still elite by any stretch. Canelo ranks 7th in total connect percentage in the sport at 35.3% on average. He ranks top 10 in power connect percentage as well. So we're going to have a situation in this fight play out where, the younger, more aggressive fighter Munguia, he's going to come in there with high volume. He's going to look to do damage, something Canelo won't be able to match him in terms of volume. But, the old master starts setting traps, look to walk the young gun onto something big and potentially, land something devastating as Munguia unloads. So it really does set up a fascinating fight over in Las Vegas this weekend. Before I get into a best bet, I just want to mention WagerTalk 7-11 deal, which is going on right now over on site. Pick up a 7-day all-access pass from the handicapper of your choice and get an additional 4 days added on completely free. So make sure and check that out before it expires on Sunday, May 12th. Back to the best bet. Something I always try to do in boxing, obviously, is look to eliminate potential outcomes in fights, and try and play out the fight in my mind and narrow that down to 1 or 2 possible outcomes. But this is actually a far more difficult proposition in this fight than initially appears. Canelo on points, that's a distinct possibility. He's on a run of 4 straight decisions heading into this fight. We know he has gas tank issues later on as well. Plus he's getting older. What I do think it's perhaps, a little premature to say he's on the slide. Those 64 fights of his are, they're starting to add up, and there's no question that defense isn't quite as tight as it once was. We go back to the Danny Jacobs fight, for example. His defense isn't, if it was 95% then, you would say it's maybe 85% now. That sharp left counter of his doesn't quite make it out of the holster as quickly either. But look, at the end of the day, he's still Canelo. He's still the face of the sport. And he's by far the more technically proficient of these two fighters as well. It's not even close in that department. So, if Canelo starts fast here, builds up a big lead over Munguia, in the early going, he could well cruise late on and get the decision win. Saying that, however, while it's not as likely, Munguia also does have a shot to win this by decision on Saturday. We're talking about one of the most high-volume power punchers in the entire sport. This will not be Jermell Charlo 2.0. survival mode shenanigans going on. You know, Jaime Munguia is coming to win. He's got the Mexican flag on his back. This is an all-Mexican war, obviously, against the legend. I mean, he will not let this opportunity slide, and he's going to do whatever it takes to win this fight. And should Canelo fade late on in this one and either fail to stop Munguia in the early going with something big or build up enough of a required lead to coast, I would not be at all surprised to see Munguia outwork him. You know, that's what's going to happen in terms of his volume. You know, Canelo gets tired in there. He looked ragged. You know, if we go back to the fight against Bivol, you know, laying up against the ropes, that could happen again. And Munguia potentially gets a decision. A KO for either fighter is live here as well. This is what makes it such an interesting fight. You know, Canelo, obviously the more likely fighter to potentially pull that off, given his supreme counter-punching ability, which we just mentioned, along with Munguia's less than stellar defense. But, you know, just as we said about in terms of Munguia potentially winning this one by decision, if Munguia has Canelo in a similar type of situation as to what Bivol managed in his fight against him, you know, Canelo's looking gassed. It's round 8, round 9. He's laying up against the ropes, breathing hard. There won't be any jab, step back, probe stuff going on from Munguia here like we saw with Bivol. He will look just to pour it on Canelo with 2 hands, get the stoppage. Like we said, he's just utterly relentless in the ring. So, you know, Canelo wins the first half of the fight through that superior technical ability of his. Munguia potentially comes late on through sheer energy and aggression. A draw is also possible as well. So, I mean, pretty much every scenario in this fight, you know, you could make somewhat of a case for. Not necessarily likely, but, you know, live nonetheless. But the one thing I can absolutely not see is Canelo outworking and outthrowing Munguia in this fight. It's just not his game. Canelo is going to have to be extremely economical in this fight. He's going to have to look for ways to counter Munguia's aggression. You know, something he tried to do in that first fight against Golovkin. You know, Triple G outthrew Canelo in 11 of those 12 rounds. He threw almost 200 more total punches in that fight as well. And Triple G isn't anywhere near as reckless and high volume as Munguia is. So Munguia will know that his only path to victory in this fight is to be that relentless high output volume machine in order to try and wear Canelo down in this fight, try and get the stoppage or possibly a decision. As if it devolves into a boxing match here, you know, Canelo simply on another level compared to Munguia. So gun to head, I believe the most likely outcome in this one is Canelo to win by stoppage. I just can't help but go back to those fights against the likes of, you know, Spike O'Sullivan, Gabe Rosado, John Ryder, you know, that Derenko fight especially as well, and think, you know, if Canelo's on the other end of those shots that Munguia was eating clean in those fights, it's going to be an incredibly long night for him. I don't care how tough you are. So I'm on a few bets this Saturday. I already fired in the under 10.5 rounds at plus 205. I think that's too wide. You know, we know Munguia is going to force a firefight in this one. That's what he does. And a plus 205, we believe we're getting well compensated in either fighter, you know, to get a stoppage in this one. I also took a small piece of Canelo to win in rounds 5 to 8 as well. You know, Canelo is a technician in the ring. It does take him a few rounds, you know, just like his old nemesis, Floyd Mayweather, to read patterns in a fight. But once he does, you know, it really is danger time. You know, you get too overconfident in there against him, too reckless. You know, think Amir Khan, James Kirkland, Billy Joe Saunders, and so on. You know, Canelo has that ability to turn off your lights potentially at any moment. However, if it hasn't happened by the start of the 9th round, given Canelo's stamina issues in the past, Munguia likely sees out the fight, in my opinion. However, best bet in this one has to be what we talked about right at the start. You know, Munguia, most punches thrown at minus 220. It is a steep price, no question, but it's for obvious reasons. Like I said at the start, I just don't see any way, given the styles of both of these fighters, that Canelo can keep pace with the sheer volume that Munguia is going to bring in this fight. And I personally would have made this line even higher than it is. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. It always, you know, it always helps and is appreciated. And until next time, Slán Abhaile, best of luck on all your bets.